Hello, everyone. Welcome to Older Queer Voices. I'm Raga De Silva, your host for the podcast. Today on Older Queer Voices, I'm joined by Franco Stevens and Jen Rainin. Franco is the founder of Curve magazine, which transformed lesbian visibility and community at a time when representation was either not there or was risky. Jen is a filmmaker and storyteller who co founded Frankly Speaking Films to center powerful stories about queer women. Together, Franco and Jen also co founded the Curve Foundation, championing LGBTQ plus women's stories and culture through intergenerational programming and community building. Today's conversation is about identity, storytelling, partnership, creativity, aging, and the importance of preserving queer stories across generations. Welcome, Franco,
Hi, welcome. Thanks for having me.
and lovely to see you again after a few years, right? It's been a little while.
I know we had a great time when we met up talking about Ahead of the Curve.
And welcome, Jen.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you again, Jen. And I'm aware that we're going to have you only for a short while today, 30 minutes. So we're going to make the most of it. And of course, Franco, you're going to stay back, right, and talk to us until the end.
Absolutely. You'll be so sick
Brilliant.
of me. He does be like, okay, stop talking.
Never, ever. See, we can talk to you for years and years. Okay, but we're going to start with you, Franco. Okay, so I just, of course, I know your story and I've spoken with you before. But can you just start for our listeners and tell a little bit more about your journey and what has shaped who you are today? So simple.
Wow, that is so simple. Summarize the last 35 years. So 35 years ago, when I was just a baby dyke, I had this idea that somebody should start a magazine for lesbians like myself to tell me where to go, what to do, what the culture was like, how to act, who was doing the great work in our community. And after a little while, I got tired of complaining that nobody else was doing it and decided to take on that venture myself. Little did I know that 35 years later, or rather 30 years later, that magazine would go on to become the Curve Foundation, the US's only nonprofit that uplifts lesbian, queer women, and non-binary people's cultures and stories. Yeah, we're the only ones doing that. So just a quick little,
yeah. And what a huge fan following you have. I mean, I've heard about you all the way in India, and I've told you about it. I've been on flights where we've seen Ahead of the Curve been shown, I think, and I remember messaging you. So, and of course, I'm in the UK, and you have a huge following here as well. So I hope that someday we will have your personal presence here in the country and talk about these things, to a much larger audience as well. Jen,
I,
hi, we need to know more about you as well. So if you can tell us, about yourself and how you got involved with, I'm not saying with Franco, that also we'll find out, but with the Curve magazine, and and what has shaped you into who you are today?
Oh my goodness. I will follow Frank's lead and keep it succinct. I have always been drawn to storytelling as a means for changing culture, for having social impact. I was an actor for a little while. I've been at many things. I was a teacher. Anyway, lots and lots of different winding paths that my career has taken. But when I met Frank and we fell in love and got married, the fairy tale happened to me. I understood. I began to understand her story as a story that really deserved to be told on a broad scale. I was completely fascinated, and so I began to make Ahead of the Curve as a documentary film to capture that incredible moment in time where she started this endeavor that has had such an unbelievable, powerful impact on queer women's culture. And that creation of that film really put me on a path. So now with Frankly Speaking Films, with my filmmaking partner, Rivka Beth Meadow, I only make films that center queer women and non-binary people. And that's my nonprofit. organization as well, just like their foundation, which I'm honored to be a part of.
Brilliant. So my question is, when did you meet? You said when you first met Franco, fell in love, and when did you get married? That's just the nosy me asking these questions.
Oh my. Okay, if I take this, Frank?
Yeah.
Okay. So Franco and I met at a Curve magazine holiday party. I was starting a lesbian business, which is no longer in operation. And my business partner at the time said, hey, we have to go to the Curve holiday party. You've got to meet Franco. She's totally lovely, and we're going to advertise in her magazine. And I didn't know about the magazine at the time. So when I got there, she was the most warm, lovely creature. She was clearly holding court, and everyone was buzzing around her. But she took the time to give me a hug, and there was a spark. And that's the beginning of the meeting of the love story of my life, that went on to a date where we shared vegan ice cream and became Facebook friends so that we could DM into the night, and the rest is history.
How dating has changed, hasn't it?
Oh my.
Yeah. When we talk to the younger people about how we dated, they can't even understand. They say,
I
like,
know.
really? You couldn't tell each other you were meeting? Like, I'd say that we set up dating meetings, like a month in advance. We didn't have phones to even, confirm, but we would reach there.
Yeah.
We didn't ghost our dates, like how they do these days. But yeah, but such a wonderful story. So, but I think I'm going to talk about something different in terms of the universe brings in two powerful women together. It's just beyond a love story, right? It's not just two women falling in love and creating a life together. It is about both of you creating a powerful narrative for the world. That's how I see it from the outside, because then you use your collective skills, talent, and your journeys, and you then build something more powerful like the Curve Foundation. Franco, you want to tell us more about the Curve Foundation?
Sure. Where do I start? Let's see. So the Curve Foundation started from the idea of Curve magazine to uplift our culture and our stories. So we took a look at the landscape while we were filming Ahead of the Curve. We asked, is a magazine still needed? What does the community need now? And it seems like, to me, the answer was clear that the mission's the same, but the way we go about doing it is different. So we still have what we call now the Curve Quarterly. It's an online edition of the magazine. It comes out quarterly. And it takes a look at where our community is now. It's like an intergenerational story of where we went, where we were, and where we are now. And so the three pillars that we kind of act on at Curve is uplifting the journalists that tell our stories, by providing fellowships and mentors and job assistance, and that has really made such a huge impact. Nobody can tell our stories like we can tell our stories.
Yeah. And what are the other two pillars? Is
the other two pillars are preserving and archiving the history in our community.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then creating community all year round by programs like Lesbian Visibility Week, which I know Diva spearheads over there in the UK. And in the US and Canada, it's the Curve Foundation. So we work with other organizations, like we work closely with Diva to create an international platform for Lesbian Visibility Week.
So I remember during our last conversation, you were talking about that the magazine, for instance, the Curve magazine, the audience was there and it was growing, but the times had changed, and that you were looking at a digital platform to make sure there's the same storytelling and more. And is this that platform you're talking about that you finally, like, you've created and it's working?
What we've created is so much more than that. For example, one of the programs that we run is the Curve Archive. So you can go in and check any one of those magazines that appeared through the 30-year print history of Curve magazine for free. And what a great educational piece. What a great piece of history for our community to go, what were lesbians doing in 1997? I'm going to go there and I'm going to find out exactly. It's going to be at my fingertips, and I can, it's not behind a paywall. And the reason we didn't put it behind a paywall is a fewfold. For example, we really want it to be accessible to as many people as possible.
Sure. And is it subscription based?
No, it's completely free.
So I can go online now and I can become a member, and I will receive all those things for free. If I wanted to know anything historic, I just need to go on your Curve Foundation website.
You don't even need to become a member. You can go on curvemag.com, go right to the archive, and start browsing without entering a bunch of stuff. It's completely private and secure. It's not like the days where you were hiding the Curve magazines under your mattress so that your mom wouldn't find it. And I like to think of it as really a intergenerational experiment. That's how I think of the Curve Foundation. How can we bridge the gap between Jen and I's generation, the older generation who laid the path work for us, the younger generation who are coming up and looking for the stories of those that came before them? And it all goes back to, if we don't tell our stories, either they won't be told at all, or they won't be told in our authentic voices.
Excellent. And this is exactly what we're doing with Older Queer Voices, by the way. That's the whole idea. And I keep telling people, you must come and give your stories and make sure that your essence is captured. Because and I go a little further, Franco, from what you just said, and I say that we will be erased easily. So it's not just that we will be forgotten or dismissed, that it will be so easy to erase our stories. I mean, I will come to that. I will talk to you about a little bit more about
okay, because I'm getting all in a frenzy over here about what's going on.
Yeah, so I do need to talk to you about it, but I'll first come back to Jen on this whole filmmaking, storytelling. You're capturing what is happening or has happened. So why do you think that storytelling in that form is important, and why does it matter?
Oh my goodness. We as humans are driven by story. We're motivated to action by story. We're able to connect with each other through story, and we're able to see past difference by seeing through film in particular, which is such a powerful medium, the commonalities that we have behind our superficial differences. I think storytelling is it's critical to the human experience. And I wanted to tag in a little bit around the importance of intergenerational programming, both with the Curve Foundation and through, it's one of the big reasons we do what we do. When we made Ahead of the Curve, one of the biggest surprises for us was how many young queer people were coming up to us after seeing the film, very moved to see these stories. We have not, as a society, we have largely erased queer women's history. We haven't had our stories well told, well distributed. And so coming up as a young queer person, to see, it's so critical that we are able to see our stories, to see the lineage that we come from, so that we can feel grounded, rooted in all the work that has come before. And there are so many young queer people now doing extraordinary work. So to be able to build upon the work of the past, it amplifies and strengthens our community in the ways that we need in order to be sustainable, to have a community that's worth joining, that's able to sustain and not be legislated away.
Yeah, I so agree with you, Jan. And intergenerational conversations are so critical. I mean, I find that when we speak with the younger generation, and I'm talking about two, three generations even behind us, and there was Section 28 here, for instance, from 1988 to 2013. You couldn't talk about homosexuality in schools, and so imagine there's an entire generation of people who lived for 15 years who had no one to go to. They couldn't talk about it. They didn't have they didn't have information, but they didn't have support either. So they have grown in a homophobic environment. So, but those people are now in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and we met them over the last weekend. And the younger generations, they have no idea. They say, oh, what is Section 28? They don't know. They haven't heard about it. So when you have these conversations and you're mixing wisdom and history and experience with younger people who have the passion, the advantage of being innovative and fresh thinkers, I think it's a great combination. And I salute you for doing what you're doing, because it's not easy what you're doing, and I know that. And I'm talking in terms of, say, resources, funding, that always becomes difficult for people in our space. And do you agree with that, Franco and Jen?
Yes.
Beyond,
Yeah.
nobody is funding queer women. I mean, the word lesbian is being erased from our own culture.
I mean, particularly in this moment, this, with all that the world is watching unfold in the United States, there's an atmosphere of fear and contraction, particularly among corporate sponsorship. We've lost pretty much all of our corporate sponsorship. So now the only opportunity for us for funding, there are a few philanthropic grants, but mostly it's through community donations. That's it. That's our only recourse.
Sure. Let us know if you want us to, share a link on any of our, social media platforms. I'm happy to help you crowdfund as well, or, support you in any way. And I was going to come to this because whatever is happening in the US politically, there's been a rollback on DEI. I don't know what we call it in the US. We call it DEI initiatives here. And the impact of that is sadly felt across everywhere in the world, but in the UK as well. I mean, we lost projects, so many projects ourselves. All the top clients who had signed agreements with us, contracts with us, they backed away. So how are you seeing the influence of these conversations? And I'll start with you, Franco, and commitments around inclusion. So how are you managing and navigating this space right now?
So like Jen said, we have had we've lost a lot of corporate sponsors. And we really depended on them to cover the cost so that we can keep everything we do free to the public. We've had to ask the public to step up and pay when they can. We don't do a sliding scale. It's pay if you can. If you want to make a donation, it's tax deductible here. But some of the corporations that have stood behind us have really gone out on a limb to do that. Like I can say Deutsche Bank, right? Like they are planting the flag right now. And, most of us use banks. We might as well use one that supports us. The people there are great. They really put a lot of effort into supporting our community. And, it's hard to stand on the right side of history when there's so much pressure. There are some other corporations that are standing on the right side of history financially, but they are being very quiet about how they do it. And for us, that's still very helpful. at the end of the day, their decision to stand behind us is what's going to keep nonprofits like the Kerr Foundation going.
Do you think that this may change in the future, that it may change for the better? Or do you think it's still going to regress and go backwards, and take us back 100 years?
Oh, we are not without hope.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah,
That's
you
true.
bet. I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's why we continue to fight, because we have seen, I like to think of it as a pendulum. I like to think of it as a pendulum. I hope I'm right. I mean, we've seen rights be gained, and then that feels threatening to some folks, and so there's a pushback. Hopefully, we will get to swing back again. There are so many people who are very unhappy with the direction that things are going in now. And I'm heartened to see how many of my fellow Americans are standing up and
Great.
and taking a risk to fight for what's right. So yes, I think that I think there's a good chance that things will at some point right themselves.
Because it's a dangerous point we've reached, because this is when people with good intentions, who are doing really good work, and if they don't have funding and resources, will go right down, and it's very hard to come back up. So I tell people who are in this space, including myself, because as you know, we are, facing similar issues right now here. We are just saying to ourselves, let us stay afloat. As long as we can stay afloat, no matter what, when it changes, the pendulum changes, we will just resurface in a bigger way. But I do want to touch on the political landscape a little bit, with your permission, of course, and you can say as much as you want or as little as you want. It is what we are seeing from here, that what is happening in the US is what politically is affecting not only the community there, but all over the world. Look at the trans community, for instance. So I have this. How are you, first of all, navigating it personally, emotionally, and then, of course, practically? Because one is feeling really sad and bad and tragic about it, and two is doing something about it. Franco, can I start with you on this?
Well, I don't really even know how to break down that question, but I can tell you that the way that I've always chose to deal with things is in community. Our collective voices are strong. If we take all the beautiful letters of the rainbow alphabet and band together, our collective power is much bigger. Like, no, how can I put this? At the Kerr Foundation, we're super inclusive. This, it dates back to our first transgender employee in the 90s. It's always been part of our culture. If we don't band together now to combat what's coming our way, then I really worry about our ability to stand up and fight. We cannot be arguing between ourselves. We're all basically fighting for the same thing: our rights, our dignity, our ability to walk down the street without fear. And if you look at what's happening in this country, we don't have that right now. There's a lot of fear. And, it goes obviously beyond the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah. Jen, you want to add to this?
Yeah, yes, I agree with everything, of course, that Franco's saying. And I think for me, the way that I look at it is, what is in my sphere of influence? What's in my ability to manage? How can I participate in a way that is positive, that resists what's happening, that makes that sows the seeds for once the horrible forest fire of whatever this is burns out. And for me as a filmmaker, it's telling those stories. My filmmaking partner and I actually have been, since the November election, we thought, okay, well, what can we do in this moment? We reached out to Commander Emily Schilling, who we had met, actually I had met during a Lesbian Visibility Week on a panel the prior April. She is the highest ranking transgender naval aviator, and she's basically Tom Cruise in a dress. I mean, she's really quite something, a literal rocket scientist. And I asked her if she would be willing to allow us to film with her during the week of the leading up to and through the inauguration. And she graciously agreed. And it was deeply moving to be invited into her experience in that week. And as a result, we decided that we wanted to work together and to bring in several other transgender troops and to make a much larger project. So for the last year, we have been filming with Commander Schilling and 2 other troops to document what's happening and to show, I mean, I think we all know that this is animus. This is, the claims that are being made are not based in truth. They're based in hatred and fear. And I think for me, by making a film that will allow people to connect with these very much vilified folks, transgender people in the military, and to understand what their actual experience is, it's a step towards healing the damage that's being done.
Gosh.
So I just want to say, I just feel like everyone has something that they can be doing right now, whether it's making a film or whether it's donating to a nonprofit that supports trans individuals, or whether it's talking to family members who may have different feelings than they do about what's going on. Being in dialogue, however we can, that feels like the most important thing. And Raga, I have to apologize. I
know you have to.
I would love to continue this conversation.
I understand, Jen, but lovely to speak with you. Thank you very much for giving us your time. And I understand. We'll speak with you again soon because there's this part 2 coming.
Excellent. Okay, please.
Franco, we'll continue the conversation because as this is Sue Sanders. Have you heard of her? Sue Sanders is the person who was did an interview with us on the Section 28, and she set up something called the LGBT History Month here in the UK. And she's in her mid-70s, and the energy that woman has, I tell you, and it's brilliant to see. And whenever she meets me, she always says to me, Raga, even if you do just one thing every day for our community, that's enough. Whether you speak about it, whether you promote your videos, whether you bring in people and have conversations with them, whatever. So if every one of us kept this narrative alive positively, like you said, that the change will happen. The community has to come together. Right. But our community is stratified and we have a lot of infighting. And do you sense that? Because when you are part of a larger community, you would see a lot of these things. Do you know how you can manage it? Because I'm going to come to Renée Good soon, and there's a link to these 2 conversations. Yeah. So how do you manage the stratification within a community?
For us, me making my my stance clear on inclusion, I think is how I personally deal with it. We have bigger fish to fry than fighting between us. I said that before, and I really, really stand behind it. It's if we put as much effort into dealing with those that are trying to stomp us down as we did in, bickering with each other, then we'd have a lot more collective bargaining power, a lot more energy. My theory of going back to the last conversation about what can people do, doing something feels good. One little act of resistance, donating your time to an organization, an NPO that gives back to the communities that are important to you feels good. To be in service feels good. And we all need to feel some sense of joy right now, some sense of we are doing something. Sitting in the silence now is not a good option. But I understand people are scared, I understand people are scared. People are really scared here. And, you brought up Renée Good and, what's happening here in the States in Minneapolis is so scary.
How did the community there react, our LGBTQ plus community, considering, it was a lesbian couple? See, we get the rhetoric. We only see what's shown to us from far away, right? The main channels here.
Doesn't that go back to us needing to share our own stories?
Exactly.
And we have the platforms now until, of course, they try to they're trying to take away LGBTQ plus stories on socials as well. We know that.
Yeah.
But those stories need to be out there. That video of her driving away, trying to get out of the way and being shot in front of her family in the car need to be talked about, remembered, shared, and and she's not the only one who was killed.
So how is the community there? How did they deal with this? Did we come together? Did the community come together and resist, offer some kind of resistance? Because we can't see that online.
So the community there is banding together across gay, straight, across, like they are coming together in record numbers to combat what's going on there. They're basically kidnapping people. They're killing innocent people.
I don't even have words.
Yeah. So I don't have words, honestly. I have friends there that are on the ground and watching their reports and their feeds. Is just heart-wrenching. And it is devastating. It really, really is.
Yeah. I'm really sorry for all of us, actually. And to live in that kind of fear, in that kind of environment, it must take so much out of our community. And I am sure the younger generation that we talked about earlier, the younger generation must be wondering what the hell is going on. And as some people here have said, they want to go back into the closet because they don't want to be out and being seen as gay in that environment. Is that true?
100%. So every year we do the Curve Power List. And for the first time ever last year, we had 2 folks that said, I can't accept this honor because it's either too public or I'm too scared or it's too front facing for me. It's a direct result of what's happening in the political stance that is spreading across the world. So
we are scared as well, to be honest. Some of us talk about this all the time, especially if the ones who are out in the media, people of influence, So there is that fear that, especially I know of friends who have businesses in the US, for instance, their visas have either been rejected or they are fearful of going back because their phones, I mean, social media accounts they've had to delete to go back. And so there's this general sense of serious anxiety, panic, and fear. And I hope
Well,
that that's, yeah, go on, go on.
I was going to say, with so much anxiety and fear, what are we doing to take care of ourselves? There's only so much that level of cortisol can be like, to be underwater like that for so long is detrimental to our mental health.
Yeah. So
And
Franco, what do you do? How do you look after yourself?
well, I sit in meditation. I concentrate on my breathing. I do something good by giving back to the community. That makes me feel good. I look at Jen and tell her how lucky I am every day that I found a love who will support me in every way. I realize that, that's a rare and cherished gift that I have. And we also have the theme of this year's Lesbian Visibility Week is health and well-being. So how can we offer opportunities for the general public here to take a day? We call it Wellness Wednesday. Just one day. If you can, if you're a practitioner, offer a free yoga class. Offer to go for a walk with a friend. Getting outside is, really important. Do something that feeds your spirit and your body.
Brilliant. I think simple things, but very important things to look after ourselves, right? Self-care, self-love. And you mentioned Jen, of course, and you talked about your relationship and how wonderful and supportive you are of each other. And I loved the fact that when she came in, she straight talked about your marriage. And on that, I just want to talk about how do you feel when now you are a married couple, you've got a beautiful relationship. And then there are rumors that, same-sex marriages they're being questioned there. So how do you feel about it?
It's terrifying. But no piece of paper can define how I feel about that woman. But it is scary that our rights are being rolled back. It's, I think, in the back of all of our minds that is not a given anymore. Just because we won that right doesn't mean we get to keep it.
Yeah, true. But it's for us also, it's like shocking, and we're thinking, what's happening? We're just waiting for something to happen. And you've got some crazy people out there who are making decisions or creating division for no reason at all. And on that note, I'm just going to talk to you about aging. And if that's okay with you. Yeah. Because you said you're 35 years, right? You've been around doing this work, and I'm sure you're finding yourself in a space, and I don't know how it is for you, but I've seen that as soon as I turned 30, things changed for me. In the same spaces that I was where, revered or celebrated, I get dismissed, and I hear little comments here and there, what are grandmas doing here? Not meant in a bad way. Intentionality is really good, like just banter and joke and, those kind of things. But I see that I'm getting more and more invisible as I'm getting a little older. I just wanted to know, what is that something that you have experienced as well? And how do you manage that for yourself and for the community? Because for me, you represent a much larger community than yourself.
It's really interesting you asked that, because as a disabled person in a wheelchair, I've felt invisible for so many years. And now that I'm getting older and, yes, maybe wiser, and being a woman, it is like the however many whammy, I was going to say triple, but I'm sure it's more than that. And, when you're invisible and underrepresented, you can kind of sneak in and do some great stuff. So maybe I'll look at it like that. Maybe I'll look at it like, you know, I have been invisible for some time, and it's nothing new to me. And it's how I choose to move about in the world. Maybe I'll use it as my superpower. I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's interesting. See, because again, from the outside, we see a different story, right? For me, when I follow you on your social and whatever else is happening online, I see this person who is a powerful, person with influence, who is part of has created, built this community. As far as I'm concerned, Franco, that's what I think about you. And yes, you're on a wheelchair and you have a disability, which we are aware of. But I can never imagine someone like you being invisible, because and as I mean, online itself you have this presence, and I cannot imagine how it must be, in person. And if and the question that bothers me is like, if you can feel that, and if you can experience that, can you imagine the others in the community who don't have that kind of power and influence? And I would love for you to, if possible, tell our people who are listening in, who are going through a similar journey, aging, worries about aging, being invisible, being dismissed, being unseen, erased, so many things, right? What would you say to them? How should they keep their power, their energy?
Breaking it down, I just see their collective power and their individual power and their presence. And I think the way to feel that power is to enter a room like you belong, because you do. Enter a conversation like you are important in what you say, because you are. And it goes back again to do something that's good for the community, because that makes you feel good and positive about yourself. And when you feel good and positive about yourself, you're more likely to be less invisible. God, that was a lot of negatives, blah, blah, blah. But, I want to take this turn a little bit in our conversation, which is probably something you didn't plan. So sorry about that. But I wanted to talk about older people and oral histories, because that's kind of why we're here. So we existed in a time where there was no social media. There was, probably a lot of people watching this, there were no cell phones and no computers available to us everyday people. And that gives us a very different life experience, almost to the point where younger people probably can't even imagine what that's like. In a world where we can hardly go to the bathroom without our cell phones, the idea of going completely off the grid is so far-fetched. That's why I think our stories really matter. It's like, what was life before this last, wave of technology came in? And what I'm noticing with a program we've run called the Queer Women's Media Collective is there's a new wave of journalists that are reclaiming analog methods. They want to go analog. They don't want to have their publications online. They want like a physical print thing. And I never thought I would hear that. Like, no, we're not going to put that online. And they want to send in, personal ads through the magazine, like we did back at Curve, where you would send in a personal ad, you'd probably get a response in a month. And it's a whole different perspective. So the more people that are our age and older can tell our stories, the more influence we have. And I think people who feel invisible, if they could tell their stories, they realize that they're not invisible.
True. It's a very interesting topic you've touched upon, and I mean, I'm enjoying listening to you. So I'm just like kind of listening to you, but one of the things that we hear a lot about, because we do a lot of panel conversations here with, the corporate community and our community, and the younger people come up and say to us that, oh, I mean, can we join? Do you have a WhatsApp, and can we get WhatsApp? And and I have a way of doing the QR code and say, oh my God, you know this? Like, oh, I've learned something today. And then they question our ability to understand technology. And I say to them, and Nicola says to them, that do you know who invented the computer? Who invented the internet? It's the generation much before you, even generation before me. So
Yeah.
technology is something that comes, and right, like as you rightly said, we start from analog, and where have we reached today? We are in AI, pioneers in AI. And when people talk about disruption and innovation, they only talk about the younger generation. And this is where I think that oral history you're talking about works really well, because there have been innovators and disruptors in our generation, and they're still there, and they're still reinventing the wheel. 50, 60, 70, 80, doesn't matter. I'm so happy to hear that. I think we all need to capture those histories, and I'm so happy to hear that somebody is actually saying, let's reclaim analog.
A lot of
Fantastic.
younger people, a lot of younger people. But, at Curve, we're doing a lot right now to capture some of the stories of the lesbians who changed my world back when I was a kid, like conversations with, we just had a conversation with Donna Deach, who created Desert Hearts. I don't know if you know that film. It's
Yes,
like it's like the first lesbian film where it didn't end badly for the characters. They're celebrating their 40th anniversary. And
okay.
I went back and I watched that film and I thought, wow, this was so far ahead of its time. It had a budget in the 80s or 70s, what is 40 years ago? 70s? No, 80s. Of over $1 million.
Whoa.
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is it, right? And I would love to, on a separate note, I would love to personally, I think I'm sure Nicola will be with me on this, collaborate and do something together, because we are in a similar space in a way. And I would love to, I want to get stories from all around the world of people in countries where even now it is banned, but they have been around. We've been around for a long, long time. And we forget that we are not the first ones, or the next generation forgets that they are not the first ones. And we have to capture, there's some beautiful, interesting, impactful stories, right? And I'd love to have a conversation with you and Jen offline, and see how we can curate something interesting, and maybe join hands to bring something interesting to the world, and not be worried about funding. We'll get the funding, I'm sure.
Yeah. Right? Exactly. That
Yeah.
sounds like an amazing idea.
Let's do it. And on that note, I've got two final questions for you. And of course, if you need to add anything, you're welcome to. The word queer,
Yeah.
you know, we got a bit of backlash when we started Older Queer Voices. We got a lot of love, I must say, but we also, because the younger generation loves the word, they've reclaimed the word queer and they love it.
Yeah.
The older generation, people like us who have had to deal with the negative aspect, the negative connotation of the word queer, have had to. I know we feel we need to reclaim it, because I don't want to have anything negative in this space. Everything needs to be positive as we move on with our lives and leave something behind. So, what do you think of the word queer, and how does it sit with you?
First off, let me just say that I think people should be able to define, label, or not label themselves as they see fit. I personally embraced the term queer back in the early 90s, late 80s, Queer Nation in San Francisco. The first time I heard it, I was like, what? That is so outrageous. How, like, you're going to use the word queer? And people are like, we're reclaiming it. We're taking the social stigma out of it. I love it. Is it a catch all for all of us? No. The one thing that I love about the word lesbian, which is also controversial, is that it is specifically speaks to me. But I also identify myself, and terms over there are different. I also embrace the term dyke. And a lot of people are like, too much for me. I use queer, I use butch, mask, androgynous. But then again, I call myself, a crip and a gimp. So the words have power for me, and how I use them is empowering for me. And they don't always take the same form. Like, I don't always call myself a lesbian. I don't always call myself a queer woman.
Because I think we are beyond labels as well, like you said, right? And whatever people want to, however they want to identify, we should just generally accept it anyway. But language, one last thing I want to talk about is the language. I think the language has changed, and we are all, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I noticed. Certain things, because when I was on a show once, and they were throwing these new languages, I got like 1 out of 10, because I just didn't know that the language has changed so much that it means so many different things. I only knew what non-binary was at that point 2 years ago. Now I know much better, but the language has changed. And how do you feel about it? And how do you embrace the new language?
By talking about it. So, in fact, it's interesting you brought this up, because we're doing a panel discussion about this very topic during Lesbian Visibility Week. So we're having an intergenerational panel where we'll have a moderator of a certain age and a couple panelists from that same age. And then on the flip side, people that are 30, 40, 50 years older, a moderator and some panelists. And we're going to have a discussion about the terms we use that are new, and also the terms that older people like us use that the younger people might not even have a clue about. But I want to know, what are all those terms they're talking about? I don't want to be the one who's like, what's that? I don't get it. Knowledge is power. I want to know. I want to know what the people are talking about in my community. So I'm really, really looking forward to that conversation.
That sounds really interesting, actually. I'd love to have a recording of that and listen to it myself, if you ever have the recording. Sounds really interesting, because that's what it is, right? This is the past, and that's powerful. And this is the present, which is also very powerful. How can we bring it both together? And that's something that we need to continuously, I think, learn and unlearn and relearn from each other. And Franco, before we end this conversation, and I'm really sad that we're nearly at the end. Like I said, we could speak for days and hours and weeks. So, is there anything else you would like to share with us? And, because one of the things that I think about you when I think about you is that you are a trendsetter. You're somebody, who has, got things happening all the time. You're continuously doing different things. You don't stop and say, okay, now it's time for me to just have me time. So what would you like to say to us?
Well, let me back it up a little bit. I used to shy away from talking about my disability, but through the filming of Ahead of the Curve, and how many people came forward to say that the part that Jen really talked me into talking about my disability. Because I was like, I'll do this movie, but I don't want to talk about my disability. But what I found is that it really helped people. I suffer from incredible pain. I can't do what I used to do. I sometimes have days where I can't get out of bed. But what I can do is what I can do, and I try to do it. So if somebody listening to this thinks they can't make a difference, they can. One little thing can make a huge difference. And that one little thing could be listening to somebody else's stories. So often when we are in conversation, we're thinking about what's the next thing we want to say? How do we want to relate to that person's story? How do we want to tell our own version of our life experience? But so much comes from listening and giving space. That's what I love what you do here, is you give space. And for me, being in a room with my seniors and my juniors and just listening to them is very powerful. And I'm lucky enough to have my mom living here with me. And I just get to randomly ask her questions and listen to the stories that she has, because, you know, when she passes away, a lot of those stories are going to go with her. And it's the same with our history. Listening to our elders and hearing those stories and documenting them in places like this allow us the ability to preserve our history. So
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing so much with us today, Franco. I must say thank you. Like, I cannot even, when you responded and you said you were prepared to be on the podcast, we really celebrated because we want your story here. And I also know a lot of people in the UK know about you and the Curve magazine and your own personal journey. I think it's important for them to know that you're still going strong and you're still doing the fight on behalf of all of us, you know, but you're creating new ways of sharing, new ways of preserving history. And that's so much more than a lot of us do. So thank you so much, Franco.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And what comes through so clearly is that queer history is not just about something we look back in. You know, it is something we actively carry, protect, and pass on through storytelling, partnership, community building. You remind us that older queer lives are not footnotes, they are foundations. At Older Queer Voices, we exist to make sure those foundations are seen, heard, and valued. So thank you for helping us imagine a future where queer stories are not lost to time, but held with care, dignity, and pride. Thank you also to our listeners. Please do remember to comment and share. Thank you to our partners. We have GF Clothing, Proud HR, My G Work, Ageism is Never in Style, Out and Wild, and of course, Outspoken Speakers. If you want to reach out to us, please write to us at theviewsroom@gmail.com. We will also be sharing a few website links for the Curve Foundation. If you want to reach out to them, please feel free. And of course, make a donation. Let's keep Curve Foundation going. Thank you very much. Until next time.